Hello my friends, today we are going to begin an image editing breakdown for the image that we're looking at right now. So this is an image I created last year called the Undiscovered Country, and I recently had someone asking me about the technique that I used in this image for removing the face from the subject. So this is something that I actually do fairly frequently, and it's actually a very simple technique. So I figured if I'm gonna talk about that, I might as well just go ahead and do a full breakdown of the image editing process here. So we're going to break this into parts because I think it'll just be a lot more easily digestible that way. And in this video, we're going to begin by showing how I brought this head into the background here and how I removed the face. So let's go ahead and get to it. So let's go to our background. This is our background image, and this image is actually a composite in and of itself. It was originally a couple of images that I took in Death Valley at a place called the Racetrack, and I made those into a panorama. So that was like sort of the bottom half of this photograph is a panoramic shot from Death Valley. And then I expanded the sky by adding some clouds from another image and also just painting some clouds into the sky here to just really expand this background and make a nice, big, vast open space that is perfect for the kind of surrealist image that we are creating today. So we're going to need our subject, so let's take a look at that. This is a shot that I took in my studio of a mannequin that I use fairly frequently. So this mannequin is sometimes just something for me to test lighting on. Other times she's a stand-in for me when I'm doing self-portraiture. And I really wanted a bald head in this image, and the mannequin has a nice bald head. So I thought that that would be perfect to use her for this subject. So we're gonna go ahead and start by just selecting her out. So this is gonna be really easy. We're just gonna go up to select subject, and Photoshop is going to select her for us. Now, if you don't have that option, you can use the quick selection tool. So you can come over here and choose that here from the menu. You can also hit W to get the quick selection tool. And but for our purposes, we're just going to stick with select subject as we just did. And I'm gonna go ahead and refine this selection. So we're gonna hit Option Command R to open up our select and mask dialog. And we're gonna zoom in on this, and we're just gonna check and see how the edge is looking here. So for the most part, the edge on this looks pretty good. There's just a couple small parts that Photoshop didn't get quite smooth. So I'm gonna go ahead and make sure I just have my regular brush. That's the third one down here. And I'm gonna zoom in a tiny bit more and make this a little bigger. And I just want to tap that out a little bit more there where there's kind of like this little bit of a gap on the edge there. Okay, so perfect. And then I'm gonna come down here to the bottom where I noticed that we missed a tiny bit on her like sort of shoulder area here. And I'm going to tap that out too. And if you go too far, you can hold Option or Alt on your keyboard, and that will allow you to remove from the selection. Okay, so now we're just gonna do some global refinements. So we're gonna go over here to smooth, and we're gonna smooth it to 40 pixels. We're gonna go to feather. We're gonna feather it to 3 pixels. And then we're gonna add a contrast of 30%. And you can see how that has changed our edge here and just really smoothed it out and made it look a lot more natural. So we're gonna click OK, and that is that. We have our selection. So we're gonna go ahead and add this as a layer mask. So we're gonna click the Add Layer Mask button. And what I typically do is I'll just save this image like this so that if I decide I want to use it for something else later or whatever, I still have this selection ready to go for whatever purposes I may have for this. So I'm going to make sure that I have my actual layer selected here, and then I'm going to hold Command and click on my layer mask, and then I'm going to hit Command C to copy her, and we're going to go to our background and hit Command V to paste her in here. And then we will right click on that layer and choose Convert to Smart Object. And I'm going to go ahead and call that layer Head. So let's just start moving her into position. So I'm going to drag her over here and around about there is good for now. So let's hit Command T because we want to transform her. She's a little too big. So I'm going to make her smaller. And I'm also going to straighten her out a little bit. So I want this line to be a little more flat. So I'm just going to kind of slightly tilt her this way. Probably something like that is good. I think I'm liking this positioning. Tap her down just a little bit there into the, I just want her in this sort of like grassy area here. And let's go ahead and commit to that. Okay, so as you can see right now, this really doesn't look natural at all because there's just this really hard line along the bottom of our subject here, and it looks like she's kind of just weirdly floating in the scene. So the first thing we want to do to fix that is add a layer mask so we can clean up this edge. So we're going to add a layer mask to this layer by clicking the layer mask button. And I'm going to go ahead and zoom in, and let's grab our brush and make sure we've got the right brush here. So I just want a soft brush, and I want transfer mode. I'm using my pen tablet, so I'll be using transfer mode. This basically makes it so that if you press harder or softer with the pen, it will vary how heavily you're applying your brush. This will not work if you are using your mouse. So if you're using your mouse, you won't really want to worry about this. So I'm in transfer mode and I have it set to pen pressure. Okay, so I'm going to start by painting in black. If you don't have your default colors selected here, you can hit D to select those, and then you can hit X to go back and forth between black and white. So when we're painting on a layer mask, we use black to remove any part of that layer we don't want, and we use white to paint back in anything that we do want showing up. So we're going to start by using black, which we have selected right now. I'm just going to go ahead and start at 100% opacity and flow, because what I want to do for this first part is just remove this hard edge here. So we're just going to go ahead and paint out that hard edge, and we're not being too particular or careful here at all. We're just getting rid of that edge. Okay, so that is just fine for a starting point. Now I'm going to get a special brush that I made for this. So I made a brush to look like the grass that's sort of surrounding her here. And if you don't know how to create custom brushes in Photoshop, I actually do have a very short 1-minute tutorial on how to create a custom cloud brush. And the idea is essentially the same. As long as you have a shape that looks like how you want the brush to appear, you can easily make a custom brush with that. And you can even paint those yourself, which is what I actually did with this one. So let's go ahead and select this grass brush here so you can get a better look at it. And it looks like it's upside down right now. That's probably because of the settings that I have on it. So let's go up here to Shape Dynamics. And I have the angle jitter set pretty high, so I want to bring that down. Because I do want this to, I don't want it to be a totally straight line or a totally flat line, but I want it to be like the plants are all standing upright. I don't want them on their sides or anything like that. But we do want a little bit of jitter here, so let's do like maybe like 16% or something like that. And just so you can kind of see the brush shape here, let's do that. Okay, so what I did here is I actually just used a regular brush to paint some lines to create this little like sort of twig, because these are just like some dry dead stick-like bushes here that would mimic the shape of the plants that are here, so that we can use that to create a more natural edge around our subject here. So let's see, as far as other settings go, I think we're pretty good. I might increase the size jitter a little bit. And for the scattering, I might bring that down a tiny bit. Maybe a little more. Something like that is good. Okay, so I'm gonna start by just using this brush on the layer mask like I've been doing now. So I'll keep painting in black and it'll remove parts of our subject, but it's gonna remove it with this sort of plant shape. So it should look like a slightly more natural edge that will make it appear as though this grass here is actually creeping up around our subject's throat, which is what would really be happening if she was actually in this scene, right? And I think maybe my angle jitter is still too much. So let's go back into here and go back to shape dynamics and bring that down a little more. And I brought down the size jitter a little bit too. Okay, so we're just gonna keep painting here and we can go back and forth with the, and I think the other problem I'm having is that when I changed this, it kind of threw the direction of the brush off. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I think we're good now. Yes, that's much better. Okay. Sometimes you don't know why Photoshop's doing weird things. Okay, so I'm gonna take a little bit of this out up here by, I just hit X to get the white brush so that I'm painting my subject back in. You know, this doesn't have to be perfect or anything, it's just, we just want it to look like it has like that shape of the grass. Okay, so I'm hitting X to do black again. And we're gonna get a little more in here. Okay, so I think what we're gonna do now, let me zoom in a little further so we can get a closer look at this. So let's hit X and get white again. There's a part here that I don't want painted out because it just looks kind of weird. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna add another layer on top of this, and we're just gonna paint with our brush to kind of fill in a little further some of this. So I'm gonna start by getting a slightly darker color and kind of painting along here. Okay, and now I'm gonna get a lighter color. Just keep kind of painting there. Just kind of trying to make it look as natural as possible. That already looks pretty good over here. Just keep moving across. Make the brush a little bigger maybe. Okay, so now I'm going to hit my erase tool. So I'm hitting E to get my erase tool. And just, I might have gone a little too far here. So I'm hitting Shift 2 to change the flow in my eraser to 20. So I think I might have gone a little too far in the corner there. Maybe a little bit up here. Okay, so I think this is looking a lot better. Let's get our brush again and just a tiny bit of some of that darker color over here. So we're kind of mixing the darker and the lighter color together to give it that more natural appearance. Okay, so I think this is looking pretty good now. Now we are looking like our subject is actually sitting here within this kind of grassy area rather than just kind of floating above it. Now we can move on to creating the opening in the face. So let's go ahead and name this layer so we don't forget what that is. We're going to call it grass. And now we are going to get our pen tool. So we'll hit P for the pen tool and we'll zoom in. Not quite so close. There we go. So what I typically do when I'm creating an opening like this is I start by creating a path with my pen tool. And what I do when it's like a human face is I try to sort of follow the contours of the face as I'm creating my shape. Now there are instances when I won't do that. Sometimes I'll just make more of like an oval, but except for in some very specific circumstances, I tend to like it better if the opening kind of contours with the subject's face. So we'll just start up here at the top of the forehead area, and we're just gonna draw out a point here. And if you don't really know how to use the pen tool, there are a lot of tutorials that will show you how to use it, and I definitely recommend that you learn how to use it. It's a very important tool and a very helpful tool in Photoshop. Okay, so we're just kind of picking some points where we think we kind of want these contours to be on the face. And then we're just dragging out the handlebars to kind of give it the shape that we're looking for. And there are some spots where I might want like a kind of more jagged edge, and others where I really want to keep it pretty soft. Okay, so I think I'll put one down here near where her jaw line would be. And really, there's no right or wrong answer here. This is just kind of how you want to do it and what you think looks best. I think I'm gonna put one down here kind of like around the tip of her chin. So I think you get the basic idea here, so I'm just gonna go ahead and speed this up. Okay, so I think I'm pretty happy with the path I've created here. So I'm gonna go over here to paths, and I'm gonna call this face opening. And this is just so we can go back to this path at any time and alter it or whatever we need to do. So we're going to, as long as you have your pen tool open, you can right click here and choose make selection. And you can set your feather radius. I usually use about 2 pixels, and click OK. And now we have our face opening selection. So we're gonna add a layer mask. I'm sorry, we're gonna add a new layer, and we are gonna fill this with a gradient. So we're gonna hit G to get our gradient tool. We're going to open up the gradient here and the gradient picker, and we're going to change the colors. So we're going to click here on the first stop, which is set to 0%, open up the color, and I'm just going to pick a color from the furthest left-hand side of my selection here and click OK. Then I'm going to add another point. So if you want to add a point, just wait until you see the little hand there and click, and that'll add a point. And I want that at 25%. And then I'll open up the color picker and we'll go about a quarter of the way through this and click another color. And then I'll add another stop at 50%. And we'll do the same thing, open that up, decide where about 50% of the way through is, click OK. We'll add another one at 75%. And then we will add a final one at 100%, so as far over to the right as we can get, and click OK. So there we have our gradient. So now, and make sure you have your selection active when you do this. We're just going to hold shift and pull this across that selection there, and there we go. So now we're going to add another layer on top of this, and this one we're going to fill with black. So I'm going to hit D to get my default colors, and then I have black there in my foreground, so I'm going to hit Option Delete to fill that with black. So now we can hit Command D to deselect here, and we are going to call this top one black and this bottom one gradient. And we will go ahead and put these into a group. So I'm going to hold shift and click on the black layer and hit Command G to group those, and we'll call that face opening. Okay, so we're going to go back to our black layer and we're going to hit Command T to transform this. So I'm going to hold Option as I transform it, and what that does is it transforms it around the central point. So I'm going to hold Option and create my transformation, something like that. Looks pretty good. And oh, actually, I don't think we went far enough there. So let's go back. I hit Command C to go back. Let's hit Command T. Sometimes when I'm using the magic mouse, things bounce around on me if I like barely touch it the wrong way. Okay, so there we go. That's more like what we want. So now I'm going to hit V to get the move tool. And I'm going to tap it down a little bit, and I'm going to tap it to the left because I want this line is closer to the foreground, right? So this should look a little wider and this should look a little more narrow over here. And I think that that's pretty good right there. So as you can see, this is actually a very, very, very simple process to do this. And then the last thing I would do here is on the gradient part, go to Filter, Noise, Add Noise, and add, let's say 4%, and make sure it's set to Gaussian and monochromatic, and that is about it. So we have our face opening. So as you can see, there is a little bit of the mannequin's sort of like eyebrow sticking out here. So we'll want to clean that up. So let's open our smart object. So when you create a smart object, it makes this little sort of square shape in the corner of that layer. And you just double click on that and that'll open up your smart object. So we're going to zoom in on that. And we're just going to stamp out this area here. So how I'm going to do that is I'm actually going to add another layer, and I'm going to clip that layer to our original layer. So I'll do that by right clicking and choosing Create Clipping Mask. Now I'm going to get my stamp tool. So I'm going to hit S for my stamp tool. And I'm going to make sure, I have it in darken mode right now. I don't want that. So I'm going to make sure the mode is set to normal. And the opacity is 100%. The flow, I think I'm going to set to about 20%. So I'm going to hold shift and hit 2. Just set it to 20%. And I'm just going to remove that eyebrow there. So I'm going to sample here. So if you don't know how to sample with a stamp, you hold Option or Alt to sample, and then you paint. And the reason that I clipped this is because this will prevent me from painting outside the lines. And I'm gonna do a little bit more going a bit further down here because, oops, picked up some of the eyebrow. Because some of the makeup on the mannequin is kind of bleeding out to the edge here too and making like a little bit of a discoloration there. So I don't want that. That you don't accidentally add things in that you don't want. So you want to sample fairly frequently so that you're making sure that you're getting the correct colors and everything. Okay, so I think that's probably already pretty good. I kind of like lightened it a little too much here, so I will actually put this back into darken mode. And let's see if we can't darken that back up just a little bit. Okay, I think that looks better. There's one last little spot. Okay, perfect. So it doesn't really matter how this looks, right? Because this part of the face is not visible. We just needed to remove the outer edge there. So we're gonna hit Command S to save this and Command W to close it. And there we go. Now that is cleaned up in our image. So we have added our weird head to our image and we've removed the face. And now we are going to need to do a few more things to make sure that this subject really looks like it belongs here in our image, but we're going to go ahead and conclude this tutorial here. In the next one, we will start adding the skin texture onto our mannequin, and we will also add a shadow to make sure that she really does look like she belongs here in this background. So that is it for now. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. If there's anything that you'd like to hear me talk about, make sure that you let me know, and I will see you next time.